Hello everybody, this is AJ, you're with the Mighty Glue Stick, and it's time for another monster video! The Ettin, in the language of the giants, it means runt. Actually, Ettin means giant in Old English. Jotun, Ettin. But Ettin are giant in size only. They are not related to true giants, nor are they giant kin. They, like the Minotaurs I covered in the last monster video, are the product of a curse. A corrupt and foul form of life born from a bunch of idiots who decided it was a great idea to enter a temple of Demogorgon and upset the locals. Ettins have, as a consequence, an otherworldly nature to them that has resulted in their unusual physiology and a strong streak of chaos with a hefty helping of carnivorous evil. Ettins go way back to 1977's first edition Monster Manual. They appeared in a few adventure supplements along the way, but were not yet really fleshed out with background lore. Ed Greenwood wrote an Ecology article and for the Dragon number 92, and I have included the details of that in this video because it's really good, because he went into great detail about the habits and biology in that article, and it is just as useful now as it was then, really. In the article he established that there is a relationship between Orcs and Ettins, and while Ettins borrow a lot of, and it pains me to say this, hill giant culture, they are not related to the giants, and even if they had some mingling in the past, they certainly don't now. There is also the fact that trolls and Ettins seem to be able to breed with each other. As to why or how, who knows, but there are two-headed half-troll Ettins, and they are just as dangerous as they sound. Ettins became associated with giant kind by 3rd edition, and as is typical of 3rd edition, there were weird template varieties with little or no basis in actual official lore. In Savage Species, there were rules for player character Ettins, and there were NPC Ettins, such as a smart Ettin named Gorg, who is both barbarian and a sorcerer. The Fire-Souled Ettin appeared in Dragon number 314, December 2003, and in the article Brotherhood of the Burning Heart, there was also Grush, a run-of-the-mill Ettin barbarian, and Brogan, Ettin dire werebore. Oh, and Theric, a Tauran Ettin elephant crossbreed. See what I mean about weird 3rd edition? The Monster Manual 3 includes the Spell-Warped Ettin and the Libris Mortis book. We see the Hooded Pupil Ettin. I particularly like the Libris Mortis, by the way. I think that's one of the better supplements for that edition. 4th edition gave us the Ettin Marauder and the Ettin Spirit Talker, depicting Ettins as giant kin who lived as wilderness marauders and headhunters, such as Gurak, who carefully preserved and collects the slain foes' heads. So as editions went on, the Ettin gained a sort of gained and lost lore here and there in an ironically chaotic fashion. Moving on to 5th edition, we have the Ettin once more, not as a giant, however. Although it has dark vision out to 60 feet, there is no mention of the fact that Ettins hunt almost exclusively at night and prefer to lair in darkness, caves, abandoned mines, and the deepest jungles and forests. They are well adapted to hunting in the dark, and they can't see much past the range of their dark visions, so they don't tend to throw rocks unless they have no other weapon at hand. Even smashed up furniture or uprooted trees will do. So, gathering up all this lore and building on what we know from the most current Monster Manual and from Ettins seen in the lore of other campaign settings, what can I tell you about them? Quite a lot. First, Ettins were once orcs. They became giant multi-headed monsters due to the corrupting power of Demogorgon. Though typically Ettins do not worship or revere Demogorgon, and they have a sort of a religion worshipping their Ettinized version of the hill giant progenitor and demigod Grolantor, though most Ettins don't know his actual name, and they tend to have their own version of it. Grolaninator or Groltor. Ettins sometimes can be born with more than 2 heads. This has precedent in the world of Kryn for the Dragonlance setting. An Ettin can have one of its heads chopped off, and this will render it confused for about 6 rounds, during which time one of its arm will hang limp at its side, but then they will regain full use of the body and recover. Ettins with 1 head are considered by other Ettins to be deformed, and a 1-headed Ettin generally won't breed anymore. It is not selected. The right head of an Ettin is always the dominant head, and typically the smarter of the 2 or more heads. Ettins may bicker between their two heads, but they don't argue constantly, as is kind of implied in the 5th edition version, nor to the point that the two heads are not working together or distracted from whatever they're doing and going on around them. Ettins are very capable hunters, exhibiting excellent cunning when it comes to ambush, chasing down prey, and simple tactics such as maiming someone so that others come out to the cries of help before they attack. Ettins are always willing to negotiate for more food, but they are not bound by any promise that they give. So the results, if they're not immediately beneficial to the Ettin, they see it as being a risk to themselves, there's most likely just they're going to go for the easiest meal they have in front of them. They know nothing of honour, fairness, or truces. They just eat what they want and avoid any risk to themselves. They are solitary by nature. This is one of the reasons why they avoid bright sunlight and lair underground. Also, they find hunting at night to be much easier, so have become accustomed to darkness. Sunlight doesn't harm them, though. They just don't like it. They have very thick hide and long, matted, stringy hair. They're usually taller and thinner and more rangy than hill giants, and have orc-like facial features. The body is caked with filth, so much so that most of them look darker than their actual skin tone, which, even though they spend most of the time in darkness, is still a pink to brownish with yellow calloused hands and feet, and their teeth are yellow and uneven with protruding tusks, typical of the orc. Ettins are famously filthy. They don't wear clothing so much as they just stitch and tie together uncured pelts of animals to form a sleeping fur that they wear to stay warm. As you can imagine, this is extremely bad smelling, and Ettins are usually crawling with parasites and maggots. Their furs get replaced due to the old furs literally rotting off them. Ettins don't bathe. They can, in theory, swim, but avoid water if they can help it. So they're disgusting. As a side note, on my bucket list of things to do in a game is to get a character close enough to a sleeping Ettin to cast prestidigitation and clean them thoroughly. Hair braids, nail polish, the works, and see the reaction when they wake up. That's on my bucket list. Anyway, female Ettins gestate their young for 7 months, and the child will grow to near adult size, or at least become fully independent of care, by 1 year of age. The child will be 5 feet tall by 6 months of age, and then rapidly put on more size as they gain the ability to eat a lot more and begin to learn to hunt for themselves. Female Ettins wear tributes given to them by the male Ettins in breeding rituals. This is their only form of decoration. Otherwise, they attract mates by their hunting prowess and by their lairs. Ettins typically don't have much need for treasure, however they do recognise its practical value, particularly to orcs, who they will hire to build traps and fortifications in and around their lair. So you can come across orc-built traps and pits and rolling logs and falling boulders and things that orcs have set up around Ettin lairs. Just beware. They don't eat other Ettins unless they absolutely have to in order to survive, but any other meat is fair game to the Ettin, and they like to eat it raw, but well tenderized by smashing with or on rocks. Ettin cuisine, as you can imagine, is very gruesome. So that's the basic background lore of the Ettin. How they tie in with Demogorgon is you see that quite random variation between how Ettins look and behave and things, and sometimes they can have some weird mutations. You can get some freaky looking Ettins. Some of them don't look particularly orc-like. Some of them can be werebores. They're not immune to lycanthropy, and they're quite often inflicted with quite terrible diseases. In the 5th edition Monster Manual, we see that the Ettins are large, giant, chaotic evil, but giant in name only. Armor class is 12. They've got 85 hit points and a speed of 40 feet. Now, as I mentioned before, they're slightly taller than a hill giant, but they're not as heavy, not as massive. They have a strength of 21. Dexterity is 8, Constitution 17, Intelligence is 6, Wisdom is 10, and Charisma is 8. So they're stupid, but they're cunning. They've got a Perception of +4, and the two heads give them advantage on Wisdom perception checks and on saving throws against being blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, stunned, and knocked unconscious. Now, it's interesting to note that if you're going to use a charm effect or any other form of stunning or mind effect on an Ettin, it must be something that affects a group, not an individual, because both heads will save independently. But not so for perception and things like that. Well, yeah, generally they just roll once for perception. It's up to you. They also have one head which is asleep while the other is awake, so Ettins never completely go to sleep both at the same time. One of them's always awake and watching, which makes them extremely hard to sneak up on. They have a multi-attack, so each head basically controls one arm, and yeah, so they can use this to attack with both arms each round. And they're listed here with a battle axe and a morning star. The morning star, I'd say, would be a tree with horns and stuff shoved in it, and the battle axe is probably something that they've stolen off another giant. And they're +7 to hit, and they do 14 points of slashing or piercing damage with that weapon. And of course, as I mentioned, they can throw rocks. They usually do about 2d6 damage with a rock, and yeah, they're quite capable combatants, but fairly simple and brutish. They'll just basically smash whoever's in front of them, and they'll quite capable of taking on a group with the ability for the heads to look in different directions. They can't be flanked. It's very hard to sneak up on them with a sneak attack on their blind side, so it's very hard to do that with an Ettin. But as has previously been mentioned in the lore, a well-armed and armoured group of 3 or more adventurers should be able to take down an Ettin, according to previous articles. So yeah, and they're a challenge rating 4. They speak giant if they live around other giants, although it's listed here as one of their languages, and Orc is one of their languages. They have an Ettinized Orc language, but they also pick up smatterings of whatever language is prevalent in their area that they live. They just sort of overhear it and pick it up and use it in their language, and consider it to be their language now. Their personalities are individual. Each head has a personality of its own, and yeah, they combine the names of the 2 heads like 2 individuals. So the example here is you've got one head called Hagel, the other head called Vargel, so its name is Hagel Vargel. So yeah, that's Ettins for you. Just a short one today, everybody. I'll be back with another Explores video soon, and then of course another Monster Ecology video after that. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll catch you again soon.